silver hit pretty close to 50 already in 2011. So the fact that we're 50 now, uh, it looks high, but it might go higher still. So I think it's almost pointless to talk about price targets. It could be some number that nobody can really predict. But what is proving correct time and again is that these markets are moving in trends. And I think that particularly at this stage of the financial markets, with this gargantuan shadow banking system, there seems to be some kind of a tendency for markets when they begin to trend to then really gather such strong momentum that the rallies go vertical.
Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Alex Krainer. Alex is a market economy and geopolitical analyst. He's also a former hedge fund manager. You can find his work, which I highly recommend, on Trend Compass on Substack. Alex, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you for the invite, Mario. Always good to join you.
Yeah, and I see that you follow the system of trend following system for trading. And years ago, I looked into Richard Dennis. Do you remember the turtle trading? They
Yes.
follow trends as well.
Mhm.
And there are some good books like The Market Wizards, which is about all about that, right? So that's what you provide a service about trend following, right, for your clients?
Yeah, correct. That newsletter called iSystem Trend Compass provides daily trend following signals on about 18 global markets, including gold and Bitcoin, but it's also, Nasdaq, S&P 500, Nikkei, FTSE, and the treasury bonds and the currency pairs.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm going to put a link to Alex's Substack below in the description if you guys want to have a look. Alex, the last time we spoke, not the last time, actually, the first time we spoke another time after that, but it was June 26th. And the title of our interview was Money Lending Oligarchy in Trump's Crosshairs, question mark. That's the title I picked for our interview. I'm not sure if you find that still appropriate, but back then, gold was trading at 3,300 and silver at 36. And as we speak here, it is Thursday afternoon London time. Silver has just traded above 50 for the first time ever. It traded at 50.08 and right now is testing that 50 level. And gold as well is above 4,000, is at 4,040, up from like 3,300. How do you see that? Do you see any significance, let's say, related to the title that I had? Because from what I've studied over 20 years is that the bankers don't like gold and silver. So if gold and silver are going up quite sharply and quickly versus their currencies, that's not a good thing. I just wanted to have your take on that.
Yeah, that is correct, but I don't know if that has only to do with Trump being in the White House. I think there's a lot of reasons. Well, I think that the whole trend in gold and silver has been kicked off by the central bankers because they have been piling up gold as the new reserve currency, basically. So a lot of them have been getting rid of the dollars and the dollar-denominated debt in favor of gold. The purchases of gold by central banks have been trending higher. And I think that what I was always wondering about is how the rest of the investing public will react to this at some point, because even just a few months ago, I think that most of the bulk of the shadow banking system, and so we're talking about the hedge funds, pension funds, and endowments, insurance companies. So we're talking about people with and organizations with large amount of liquid investable assets, but they're not banks. They cannot create credit, right? So
Like private equity as well?
private, correct, yeah. And so they, I think just a few months ago, they had very close to no exposure to gold. I think in total they had 1% exposure to gold, and many of them had zero. And so the shadow banking system is, if you add it all together, it's about 230 trillion US dollars worth. And if you take the whole of the gold market in the world, it's only about $20 trillion, of which only a sliver is actually trading in what could be called price discovery markets, right? And so I was wondering if at some point only just a segment, just a small percentage of these managers, these funds and hedge funds in the shadow banking system decided that, hey, maybe it would be good to have some exposure to the gold price. What impact that would have? Because pretty much since about 2015, I've been observing that the markets when they go into a trend, and this gathers over a long period of time. So gold has been gathering momentum pretty much since the beginning of 2023. Um, Once the trend gets going, in many cases, it practically goes vertical. It just like accelerates into a hockey stick uh, acceleration. And if that happens in gold and silver, and it appears to be happening, where could the price go? I think it's impossible to predict. But if it goes into a vertical rally, it could be, $5,000 gold. It could be $10,000 gold. It could be, where silver is at $50 an ounce. Says who that before the end of the year, it might not be closer to $100 an ounce. $50 silver has already happened, I think, in 1980. So we're not talking any outrageously unprecedented price level. And then silver hit pretty close to 50 already in 2011. So the fact that we're 50 now, uh, it looks high, but it might go higher still. So I think it's almost pointless to talk about price targets. It could be some number that nobody can really predict. But what is proving correct time and again is that these markets are moving in trends. And I think that particularly at this stage of the financial markets, with this gargantuan shadow banking system, there seems to be some kind of a tendency for markets when they begin to trend to then really gather such strong momentum that the rallies go vertical.
Yeah, and the shadow banking system is like a new thing, relatively new, because prior to the '08 crisis, a lot of the capital flows would come from the banking system. But with the crisis, the regulators have made it really difficult for banks to do what the shadow banks are doing. And the worrying thing, Alex, I guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the shadow banking now, they're using strategies to keep a lot of what they do off their balance sheets, like SPVs and things like that. So it's becoming really opaque, much like the over-the-counter derivatives that led to the '08 crisis. So do you also think that the shadow banking, the family offices and so on, hedge funds, private equity, they could be concerned that there's problem within their sector, and that could be also one of the reasons why they're going for actually, and it feels like they're going for physical gold and silver, not paper, because in paper gold and silver you have counterparty risk.
Well, I think that, for a lot of these entities, physical gold is a problem because you have to, you can't just bring it into your offices. You have to store it somewhere. And I think there's counterparty risk there too. But they're doing it, and we'll see. It's like at some point, uh, well, we're gonna reach a breaking point somewhere. Something's going to go wrong because the demand for gold is much greater than the supply of gold. Obviously, that's going to put a pressure on prices. It's going to put pressure on gold dealers. It's going to put pressure on futures exchanges. I think the futures exchanges are going to have a hard time hiding the fact that they cannot deliver all the gold that they should have available for delivery. We've already seen massive problems from the Bank of England and London that they were not able to. Well, I think that there's still major difficulties delivering on claims against their bullion. And so I don't know how this story ends other than in hyperinflation and collapse. But
I,
they will, yeah, go ahead.
no, I tend to agree on the hyperinflation. Yeah. Sorry.
No, no, yeah. So that's the only thing. The hyperinflation is already baked in, or if not hyperinflation, then very high levels of inflation, which are, inflation historically has always, uh, uh, there's been a lot of inertia. So it doesn't get going when you think it should. It gets going with a time delay, but once it does, it's almost impossible to stop it. I think that maybe also one of the reasons why they are in such a panicked rush to unroll these central bank digital currencies and digital IDs and everything, and why they have deputized banks to practically be uh, law enforcement accountable only unto themselves. They can do it. It's gotten truly and incredibly ridiculous. But in a way, that's again going to put pressure on the price of gold because people will be seeking out alternatives, and some people are going into cryptocurrencies, and then the banks bring them in for questioning and say like, hey, you bought some cryptocurrencies. Why did you do that? How did you do that? Where did you learn about this? Like they're literally like questioning people about, and then what's the other alternative? I've had some friends who have been buying gold, and I don't mean like gold as in bullion in large amounts. I'm talking about ordinary people buying 1 gram. I don't know what exactly it is, like a
Yeah, well, that's about, let's see here. I can tell you 1 gram right now of gold in pounds is about 97 pounds. So it's quite
there
a,
you go.
I mean, it's like over
Yes.
100 euros
Yeah.
and about 130 bucks.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. But so from the point of view of an ordinary person, that 1 gram of gold might be better to own than a bank balance because banks are becoming very abusive to their clients. And they're restricting your ability to use your money. They're asking, I mean, I had a completely ridiculous experience last week because I was buying an item from a private vendor, and the price of the item was higher than the maximum I'm allowed to pay by bank credit. And it became a whole project about how I could pay the vendor. And it turned out to be impossible to do on a Saturday. I had to do because the bank is closed. It's my money. The item is completely legal. I want to buy it, but now I have to work around the bank for them to, and they wouldn't give me cash because I thought like, okay, I'll pay him what I'm authorized by bank credit. Give me the rest in cash. I'll pay him in cash. They'll say like, no.
Well, yeah, I'm going to
I-
be a little bit facetious. It's not your money, it's an unsecured loan to the
Yeah,
bank.
you are correct. You are correct. But most people still believe that it is their money. And so if this is
I
the
agree.
situation that they face in ordinary day-to-day life, then they think, well, why don't I spend that money on a bunch of these 1 gram bits of gold and I can use that to trade with people. So you see, they themselves are encouraging formation of gray markets and black markets, which one day will further push hyperinflation up.
Sorry, I was muted. So yeah, there's a 5 gram bar. I mean, that's
Uh-huh.
158 pounds.
There you
I mean,
go.
that's a pretty good way to put your cash away.
Yes. Yes.
And I also got from some of the viewers, I don't know if you've seen these. Um, uh, oh, they're not in my wallet right now. They're in here. Let me get it. They're called goldbacks.
Oh,
So they're like banknotes, but they've got like one the thousandth of a troy ounce. This one, so that's actually $4 right now.
okay. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and the and the, it's actually physical gold, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
embedded in
against
these
the.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and you
yeah,
can you can keep them in your wallet or in your home,
yeah.
and when you want to spend them and not be interrogated by your bank Gestapo, you're free to do that. And so I think in I when I use the word Gestapo, I literally went once to the bank and I wanted to repay a loan. Like my cousin loaned me some money, right? And a few weeks later, I went to the bank to to make the transfer back into the same account. After a few minutes, I had 4 bank employees around me. That's too much money. Why are you sending it? Can we see the loan agreement? And I'm saying like, what loan agreement? It's my cousin, right? And you can even see that I'm trying to transfer money to exactly the same account from which that exact same amount of money came. Isn't that obvious? No, they wanted a letter from my cousin to prove that she loaned this money to me. They wanted like a document proving that she was my cousin. And at one point, I said, are you guys my bank or are you Gestapo?" And one of the employees, I guess, had a little bit of sense of humor, and she said, "Oh, no, no, we are Gestapo. The times of the bank being your service provider, a friendly service provider, that's all gone. We are the Gestapo now." And they
Yeah,
really are. And so
yeah.
I think that the result is that people are going to be seeking out alternatives, whether it's going to be these goldbacks, which I think are a great idea, or little, 1 gram, 5 gram things of gold. But the result is going to be that the purchasing power of the legal tender currency is going to collapse further and faster for their, abuse and misbehavior, among other reasons.
Yeah, so yeah, very interesting. And maybe we can switch over a little bit to geopolitics, even though it affects the economy, money, and everything. And the first time we spoke, you said that you tend to think that Trump might be trying to fight the bad guys, so to speak. And I'm not really 100% sure of what he's trying to do. He does some things that are really good. Like today, I'm seeing here, Alex, that Israeli cabinet to vote on hostage release agreement. So he's gotten Israel and Hamas to sign an agreement and to release the hostages. It just depends now on the Israeli cabinet, which is a good thing. But at the same time, he's allowed the state of Israel to do what they've done to Gaza, which is a bad thing. Since we spoke in June, what's your view of what's going on with Trump, and if you if you're a bit more clear of what he's trying to do, and maybe also talk about his stance on the Federal Reserve a little bit, what you think about that. So before we proceed further with the interview, I just want to give a shout out to Dirty Man Safe. So with traditional safes, their so-called advantage is that criminals can't break into them. But Dirty Man Safe is different. Its advantage is that it's undetectable, so they can't even try to break into it. And that's only one of the many features of Dirty Man Safe. They provide 3 different sizes, and you can bury your gold coins, silver coins, bars, important documents, jewelry, and anything that's valuable for you. So yeah, Dirty Man Safe is affordable, convenient, provides you peace of mind, confidentiality, and sustainability. So if you want to find out more, there's a link below in the description. It will take you to a landing page. And if you use that link, you get 10% off if you were to decide to buy a Dirty Man Safe. And they ship it to Europe as well, not just the United States.
I've I've come in contact with a lady whose name is Susan Kokinda. She's a very active member of the Republican Party in Michigan. And I was on a podcast with her together, and she said that she was in an event in Michigan. It was not a campaign rally, but it was during the presidential campaigns in 2024, and that Trump was present at this event, and that he said to the gathering, he invited them to join him in the fight against the global financier classes, which, I find this quite significant because it would be a very very random thing if you didn't mean it and if you haven't thought it through. So the fact that he said this tells me that he probably does mean it and that he certainly has thought it through. He knows who the enemy is. Now, the fight is obviously going to be extremely complicated, and it's very clear that he's under major attack from a number of sides. The question of Gaza is the most controversial one and most difficult one because it's the most awful thing going on in anywhere in the world today, and he's facilitating it. But at the same time, I think it's not fair to lay this whole thing at his feet because, first of all, it precedes him by a very, very long time, by decades. He hasn't created that situation. Um, he, he is the chief executive in the United States, and but he has a Congress that is more loyal to Benjamin Netanyahu than they are to him. Benjamin Netanyahu could come any day to a joint session of Congress. He could be reading the IDF manual about how to kill little children in Gaza, and he would get 50 standing ovations. Whereas Trump himself has only a razor thin Republican majority in the Senate, but a lot of those Republican senators are not loyal to him. So it's a serious problem. And then his administration is infiltrated by Zionist interests. Um, the media is obviously being controlled by the Zionist interests. And then there's a very large voting bloc consisting of Zionist Jews and Christian evangelicals. He cannot make all these people go away from one day to the next. So I think that the the situation that he is in, that wasn't created by him, is such that he has to choose his battles very, very carefully. And so you can see that the priority, the most important battle is the political battle at home, because everything he's trying to accomplish is going to amount to nothing if he loses, uh, if his political faction loses the midterm elections next year. And so that is the most important thing he's fighting for. And everything else, I think he's trying to maybe minimize the damage or let the things roll as they are to their conclusion. And at the same time, he's trying to avoid getting into an escalation against Iran and getting into an escalation against Russia, which, you know, the pressure to get involved in the war against Iran and to recommit to Project Ukraine are constantly building up, and they're becoming stronger and stronger. And he's been resisting this.
It's been pushed by the Iranian conflict has been pushed by like Israel, and the other one has been pushed by uh, the EU and London, right?
Correct. Yeah. Well, I think they're both being pushed by London because, you know, as Kemi Badenoch blurted out very correctly, both Israel and Ukraine are fighting proxy wars on behalf of the UK. That's exactly what she said. And I think that there she only gave away the mindset among the ruling elites. And so I think that pressure on both those fronts are coming from primarily from London. But I think a very large segment of the American political class and, you know, the think tanks, NGOs, media, all of these academia, they're all part of this whole structure. You know, they're all beholden to these vested interests, and they are obviously, as a result, opposed to Trump. Another very strong reason that convinces me that Trump is committed to this fight against the global financier oligarchy is his insistence on tariffs. Because from the economic development point of view, you can pursue one of two systems. One of them is called the British system of free trade, you know, based on the, you know, thinking of people like Adam Smith and David Ricardo and Thomas Malthus. And the other one is the American system of political economy, which is um, based on the writings of Alexander Hamilton and the German economist Friedrich List. American system of political economy is directed towards um, building up the infrastructure, reindustrializing the nation, and raising prosperity and standards of living. You can't do that if your whole economic system is completely open to foreign competition. So, in order to pursue this type of economic development, you have to impose barriers to trade in the form of tariffs. The fact that he's insisting on tariffs tells me that he's for real. But, you know, whether he will prevail in this struggle or not, that is an open question. And I think in a lot of ways he's unhelping his cause by, on the one hand, you know, his style and approach to communication is very boorish. And I think he's alienating too many people who would otherwise still support him. And then the other one is he really is sometimes misled by the people around him, people who advise him. And I think he's committed a few very serious mistakes. In this administration, it's maybe early to tell, but in the last administration, I think definitely walking out unilaterally from the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, and the assassination of the Khalid Soleimani, the Iranian general, I think that was a terrible mistake. So we'll see. I think we won't know the measure of the man until the end of his term. And until then, he's only been in the office for about 10 months now.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Uh, Maybe we can switch over to Europe because, yeah, I'm in the UK and also in France, there's a lot going on. It looks like Macron is changing prime ministers just as fast as he changes his socks.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah, let's start with France then. Don't you think the problem in France is that they basically hijacked the elections last year? They didn't want the far right to form a government, so they've been at this trying to do something, and it's been impossible. But I see that he's just gonna nominate another prime minister, but I don't see it. I see that this next prime minister uh, leaving soon too, and eventually he's gonna have to call parliamentary elections, and all it does is put more pressure on the French economy, on the government bonds. Yeah, so if you could touch upon that and why it's so important, the government bond market.
Uh, I think that you're correct. I think that Macron will have to they will have to have new parliamentary elections in France. It's only a matter of time. He can try another to nominate another. You're right. He wanted to if we speak in terms of left and right, which I think is not terribly helpful, but uh, in those terms, yeah, he wanted to prevent the far right from forming the new government last summer. But he also wanted to prevent the far left, which was the next most popular set of parties from forming the government. So he went with some of the least popular people in on the French political spectrum and allowed them to form the government, which they did, and nothing improved. French people were alienated and felt betrayed. Now the consequences of those decisions are still with us, and every successive government falls in less time. And if there's new parliamentary, that is, when we will have new parliamentary elections in France, 100% those same parties, primarily the Assemblée Nationale, which are the main sovereigntist movement in France, they will probably get most of the votes. They will probably be the next party to form the government. And then Macron, for as long as he's president, which is, I think, until 2027, who'll probably continue to fight them and sabotage them and try to prevent them from forming a government. And this brings us to the situation where if a peaceful change of course is not possible, then you're only leaving the country with a violent change of course as a result. And meanwhile, the economy is suffering. I think that mm, Emmanuel Macron has pretty much neglected what is actually his job, which is to uphold the constitutional order and to administer the country and the society and the economy and so on. And I think that this is completely neglected on account of his monomaniacal obsession with the Project Ukraine. And this is exactly, I think, what's turning people away from his government, because I think people want nothing to do with Project Ukraine. They want the government to prioritize domestic problems, you know, immigration, economic crisis, inflation, high costs of living, high taxes, uh, dysfunctional administration. It's in France, we increasingly have dysfunctional public administration. So all of these problems are only getting worse, and Emmanuel Macron seems obsessed with Ukraine, and then the distant second might be climate change or something like that. And then there's also the problem of uncontrolled immigration, high energy costs, a loss of competitiveness, loss of industrialization. In fact, we see this problem also in Britain and in Germany. And just today or yesterday, we got the statistics that German industrial production has declined 4.4% month over month in August of this year. So it's a free fall in Germany. And then, of course, this is all high energy cost, immigration, economic decline, increased unemployment. All of this is putting uh, a building up fiscal pressures on the governments because there's less and less tax revenues coming in, while at the same time the government budgets are soaring. They're getting bigger and bigger. And so how do they're obliged to sell bonds, right? They're obliged to take on debt increasingly. And I think with the increasingly poor economic prospects and the growing likelihood of social revolts erupting in France and Germany and in Britain and maybe some other countries as well, like Italy, Romania, and so forth. Uh, I think that investors are going to be demanding higher interest rates because the risks are increasing. They're also increasingly resorting to shorter term financing, which is, again, at higher interest rates. So I think the ultimate result is going to be that the currency is going to take the hit. And I didn't even mention the trade war with the United States, with the new 15% tariffs imposed on European imports by the United States. So it's almost like a perfect storm has come together for European nations, I think especially for Germany maybe. And I think that the result is going to be a spike in interest rate and a, an accelerating collapse of the currency. I think that euro is probably in the end game. Uh, at the moment, it's doing relatively well against the US dollar, but not so well against gold and silver, right? Which is the real measure of a currency's purchasing power in the end. And so I think that we are somewhere in the beginning stages of similar collapse as the Weimar Republic has had in 100 years ago, more or less, and then the Soviet Union about 30 years ago, 34 years ago, right? I think that the European Union project has become something very similar to the Soviet Union, and I think it's going to have a very similar unraveling.
Yeah, and I guess the UK, we're also focused on what the French are focused or Macron, like Project Ukraine, climate change, and I heard you speaking with someone else on YouTube. My wife likes to watch you too, so I listened
Oh,
in,
thank you.
and you were saying that it almost feels like this is happening by design because the banking oligarchs and the political class is in so much debt that yeah, there's no way out. So what they're doing is they want to bring down the economy. They're digging deeper and deeper holes, like the chancellor here, Reeves. All she seems to want to do is raise taxes and increase wages for public sector, and instead of trying to like cut back the size of government, which I know is difficult because her supporters want that. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? That it could be done by design because you don't want a prosperous country. Because if you don't have a prosperous country, you can't take them to war. And I guess London, their objective is always to try to control Eurasia, and in this case, it would be Russia, right?
Yeah, correct. The project Ukraine is failing. The idea was to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Sadly, we are quickly approaching that threshold. But they will not give up trying to destabilize regime change and partition Russia, to balkanize it. I think part of the reason is because that's their obstacle in their imperative to control the Eurasian continent, and also because Russia is, in terms of natural resources, the richest country in the world. They have an estimated 75 to 90 trillion dollars worth. And if you can control a nation politically, then you can make sure that all that natural resource wealth becomes collateral in your financial system. So that's one of the ways that they could get out of this crisis of unpayable debt overhang. And obviously, you can't do that without war, without applying. You have to either be able to conduct an assassination, let's say some kind of a decapitation attack against Russia, to be able to install somebody to your liking, like maybe Boris Yeltsin or somebody like Vladimir Zelensky, who will allow Western capital and Western corporations in. Or you would have to uh, stage a successful color revolution, or you would have to be able to invade a nation and defeat it. I think none of this is possible, but if you keep imposing wars on Russia through this or that proxy, whether it's Chechnya or Dagestan or Georgia or Ukraine, or next might be Poland or Romania or Moldova or any of the Baltic states, then you keep bleeding Russia through wars and weakening it, and then hopefully at some point you can bring about a regime change. So, in order to get people to war, you need to destroy the economy. Because basically, when the economy is doing well, when people are feeling prosperous, when they're planning to buy houses, they're planning vacations, they're having a nice time with their friends, going to restaurants and doing barbecues and cocktails and all this. They're not much interested in war. They're not much interested in demonization of some external enemy that they need to be fight. Why should we fight? We're doing well, right? Maybe we should go and trade with them, right? That and so to generate consent for war, you have to pretty much destroy the social fabric and you have to destroy the economic foundation. And then when people are mm, doing badly, when you have very high unemployment rates and especially high youth unemployment, then you can begin to propagandize the people about, oh yeah, all of this is the fault of the Russians. If the economy is not doing well, it's the Russians. You can start spreading the narratives about big historical injustices, and then you start funding these basically brown shirt movements of let's say young men who otherwise have no future and no jobs and no aspirations in life, and no hope of getting married and raising a family. And now you give them some money and nice uniforms, and you give them a certain status and power in society, and you start brainwashing them with this. We have to, go and kill the Russians because all of these bad things in our society are down to the to Russians sabotaging us and undermining us and all of this. We've seen this whole social engineering process happen in Germany in the late 1920s and 1930s. And they resulted with Hitler coming to power, with the brown shirt movement going from about 400 men in 1930 to about 3 million men in 1933. And the brown shirts, their role is not to go fight the enemy. on the front. Their role is to terrorize the local population, and then if military recruitment goals are not being met, to abduct men by force and throw them into the trenches. And we've seen the
Sorry
same.
to interrupt you. Didn't Obama talk about creating not brown shirts, but some kind of domestic fighting force as well? I remember.
Oh, I don't know. He might have. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
even yeah, we do have now militant Antifa factions in the United States, and Black Lives Matters, and we've seen that they are being prepared for military for basically an armed confrontation against the federal authorities. And then we had the same social engineering process unfold in Ukraine, almost exactly the same thing. And the economic aspect of it, I came to that realization because I looked at World Bank data about the economic growth of some of these former Soviet states between the independence in 1991 and 2014 when we had the coup in Ukraine. And Ukraine was by far the worst economic performer in the whole world. So Ukraine was one of only five nations in the whole world that had negative GDP growth between 1991 and 2014. That's a 24-year period. And it lost 35% of their GDP in real terms, not in nominal terms. And then the second worst was Georgia, which I think had minus 19% GDP growth in that 24-year period. And the third one was Moldova with negative 15% real economic growth in that period. So that's top three worst performing economies. And all three of those nations were designated as beachheads in the West's proxy wars against Russia. And you definitely did have, particularly in Ukraine, this process of Nazification where Western NGOs have spent a lot of money of supporting these neo-Nazi, a large number. Like I think that there's been about 30 of them, like the IDAR battalion, the Azov battalion, the C19, the C14 group. There's a whole bunch of them that were abundantly funded, and the leaders of those groups have been made disproportionately powerful in their respective regions. So all of that actually, well, yeah, there you go. All of that has been actually happening. And so today in Europe, we have uh, economic decline, which seems to be accelerating. And in some cases, it's absolutely spectacular, like Britain and Germany. Um, we do have these brown shirt movements popping up pretty much everywhere. I've seen reports about this in pretty much every European country and the United States as well, and Canada. And so it seems to me that the whole social engineering process is underway to turn the rest of Europe into a fighting force uh, by depriving men of their future, by stealing their future, by um, making them jobless, making them have no money, making them unable to pursue their aspirations in life, get married, have children, have families, have a decent life. And then, we're going to be continuously scared about the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. And, you're going to have enough of these men who are going to be willing to, not necessarily to go and fight Russia, but to terrorize any opposition in their countries domestically. Ukrainians didn't want to go to war against Russia. a vast majority of Ukrainian people were saying, no, we're not interested. No, we will not defend Ukraine, even if we're attacked by the force of arms by Russia. But somehow they've been forced to do it. And so if they were able to force the Ukrainians to fight Russia, it's going to be even easier to force the Poles, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, and Germans and the Baltic state. And I fear that they are doing this and that they, unless all these governments are taken down and replaced, that they're going to be able to do it.
Well, that's worrying. Maybe we need a getaway plan, Alex. I don't know where to, but I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll keep in touch and talk again soon. And want to wish you a great weekend too.
Thank you, Mario. Same to you, and warm greetings to your audience.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.